Welcome to Kadam, the Small Steps podcast where we try to showcase individual perspectives of recent graduates about different pathways of life. I am Himansh Bhatia,
And I'm Arjit Singh.
and together we will try to uncover what it means to have a traditional career.
Normal, traditional, conventional. Words that a lot of us don't want to associate with ourselves because then we feel boring. We feel like a machine just trying to work only as much as needed to make only the money we need to survive. Yet, we're all different. And so many of us today want to individually stand out. We want to be recognized. We want to follow the latest trends. We try to find ways to look better, do better, make more money, make more connections, have more followers, be visible, be individualistic. I personally have been contemplating what life is all about, like we all do sometimes, hopefully. Is it about corporate greed and being able to be on top of the food chain, the survival of the fittest, or should we be looking to foster meaningful relationships and push each other to work towards a common nirvana for everyone, for us, but also for those around us? And so today we have with us a guest that hopefully is going to make sure that you know that nothing is traditional. So let's start the show.
It's interesting how views can be and how different our lives become because of the choices we make and the paths we travel. Today, we have with us someone whose complete life story will be called untraditional by some. But as she says, it's as simple as being born in China, being adopted at 6 months old, and raised in the US. Although that's just where the story begins. Our guest today graduated as a graphic designer, and after working in marketing and design at firms like CCG, McNutt and Partners, and Rocky Heights, she diversified her resume by moving to Thailand to be a TEFL teacher. She has now spent over a year in that role, survived a pandemic in a country where she doesn't even speak the native language, and continues to share her adventure on her creative blog. To uncover what she calls a chaotic millennial life, let's welcome our guest, Chanah.
Hey guys, thanks for having
Hey,
me on.
Chanah. How are
Welcome to
you?
the show.
I'm good. I'm very happy to be a guest on y'all's podcast. I'm honored.
Yeah, and as they say in Thailand, "Sawadee ka," or however you say it, right?
Ika.
No idea about that, but
Gentlemen, males, they use kop, so you would say sawadee kop.
Sawadee ka. Okay.
the more you know.
And that's the most Thai that I know, so don't ask any more questions.
That's okay.
Yeah. So you've been on both sides of the court, from always being that A student to now being a teacher. Which one would you say is the better life, and why? Is it, striving and succeeding to get A's yourself, or to see your students pass with flying colors? Perhaps a combination of both.
It's really hard to compare the two because I remember being a student and just always working day and night, especially as a design student. Arjit, I'm sure, can chime in on that. Just constantly working, striving to do your best, and then feeling horrible when you've done your best and the professors are still like, it's not good enough. You need to improve upon, your strategy, and they just give you critique, which is part of being a designer. So that was definitely much harder. But on the flip side, being a teacher is, I think, a lot more than most people expect it to be. A lot of people see teachers, even in America, they see them going to work, especially during this COVID pandemic. And they're like, oh, they're just teaching our kids and they're making sure our kids learn. But me becoming a teacher has made me realize that there is a special sixth sense to being a teacher. There's something that you need that it's hard to explain until you experience it. You have to have just unending love and investment for your students. And I have kindergartners, so they have been alive for like 4 to 5 years, and that's all. And it has been really interesting for me to realize, like, yeah, I'm here to teach them English. I need to make sure that they learn, that they succeed. I need to make sure that they're comprehending and remembering and that they're able to bring it back up. But at the same time, I've gotten to know these kids so well, despite the language barrier, that I can point out a kid and be like, this kid needs this today. This kid needs extra hugs in the mornings. And it's this whole other level of giving yourself over and working harder than I did as a student. So on one hand, when I was a student, I was striving for more, but as a teacher now I'm trying to give more while also asking for more. So I really can't compare the two as to which one I enjoy the best, but they're both very rewarding experiences.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's definitely rewarding when you're having to give, but also in return, you're getting a lot more emotion, or just making sure that they're getting what they're looking from you. But it's also about, them making sure that they're being able to reciprocate that in some way, either you being the favorite teacher or whatever that might be. So that's definitely rewarding. But like obviously a lot of people's plans change throughout college, and what was it like for you from going from graphic design to teaching? And then, now that you're looking to move back to the US to find more design opportunities, have you thought about maybe combining the two and being a design educator or something like that?
I have considered that. So honestly, I graduated high school in 2014 and knew that I wanted to be a TEFL teacher. That's been my long-term goal. But to be a TEFL teacher, you need a college degree. So I had to find a field that I was still passionate about that I could run with after I was done with TEFL. So both of these passions, graphic design and TEFL, have been combined for the past 5 years, me working towards this goal, this weird mix of non-traditional career. And since I've been here, since I've been working with the English materials they have are incorrect sometimes, or they don't cater towards the needs of kids. So sometimes we'll learn like, hi, how are you today? And then I'll give them a worksheet and it's not even on the correct conversation, or I'll give them a review sheet and it doesn't cover what we need. So while I've been here, I've actually been able to kind of combine my graphic design skills and create worksheets and tests and everything I would need as curriculum and materials for my students to try to give them a better atmosphere, better things to work with. So that's kind of been fun, being able to be a designer while being a teacher. I think now that I'm looking at coming back to the States, I have no idea. I have no idea what's next for me. This is the first time in my life that I don't have a plan. I don't have a goal. I'm ready to come back and see what the world has for me. This has been an adventure, ready for the next one.
So, we'll get into your future, obviously, but about this job, was this your first job as a teacher, or, did you have any expectations going into the job? And that too in Thailand, and like miles away from your own, I guess, not birthplace, but the country you were born in. How did that turn out?
Yeah. I had some instructor experience growing up in high school and going through college. I had like summer jobs where I was like a camp counselor, I was instructor, enjoyed my instructor roles. I was in charge of 30 kids a week. And like that kind of prepared me for how to manage children. A lot of people don't really understand that teaching is not just standing up at the board, giving them information. You've got to be able to engage with them, hold their attention, and swap subjects like this, especially with kindergarten. So one of the things that I really had to just kind of develop is the ability to be like, okay, what's this? What's this? What's this? Good, it's an elephant. It's an elephant. And they all get super excited. And then I'll think that they're engaged. And the next second, when I go into individual time and try to make sure that each kid is, comprehending, there will be like 10 of them that have no idea what I'm saying to them. And so in that moment, I have to quickly swap gears and be like, all right, we got to go, redo the lesson, or I've got to teach this in a different way. And sometimes you don't have a plan for that. So Thailand teaching and teaching English is super different than traditional teaching in America, because I got over here and they stuck me in the classroom and was like, all right, go. And I was like, what do you mean go? I don't have anything to teach them today. You didn't give me anything. Right. And my supervisor was like, I'll give it to you next week. And I'm like, what do you mean you're giving me the materials next week? Class starts today. He's like, just talk to them. I'm like, and that would never happen in America. America, it's like, this is your lesson plan for today. Make sure they learn it, move on to the next day. And there's a lot of back and forth in Thailand, because I'm teaching English. So half of it is grammar and reading, and the other half of it is trying to get them to speak to me. And kindergartens don't like speaking sometimes. So it's been a definite like give and take and push and pull. And it's been an experience. It is unlike anything I think I ever expected. I was expecting American classroom, you know, they sit down, they raise their hands, and usually I walk into a class and they start screaming at me. And I'm like, hi,
Cool.
I don't know what you're saying to me, but hi.
Right. Yeah. And so was the interview process similar to your experience as a teacher as well? Like, what did you know while going into the job? Did you have expectations? You know, I mean, of course, you kind of had an expectation of, okay, this is going to be, let's say, similar to what teaching would be in the US. But how was the interview process for that? How did you even get about to going into something like this?
Okay, so the interview process is different per country. I earned my TEFL certification through Oxford Seminars. Check it out if you want to be a TEFL certified teacher. Oxford Seminars,
Perfect.
and then they gave me a job advisor. So my job advisor, I sent them my resume, cover letter, and she took care of everything and connected me to agencies in China, Japan, Korea, and Thailand. And China and Japan, they like hardcore interviewed me. It was like an hour and a half. They showed me their school, you know, told me what was expected of me, like showed me the curriculum. Thailand, I sent my information to Thailand and the guy offered me a job. He was like, I have a position as a kindergarten teacher.
Whoa.
When can you come? And I was like, are you going to kidnap me? Like, don't you want to interview me? Like, you've never met me. And he was like, oh, no, it's cool. We have a kindergarten or a primary teacher position. Which do you want? Can you start in May? And I was like, I applied 2 days ago. What? And thankfully, he did end up agreeing to Skype with me and like actually talk to me. Because for a while there, I was like, this is a scam. This is scary. And he is a smaller company, which I was very thankful for. Because it's much more, it feels more family. Him and his wife take care of me and the fellow teacher I have here with me. They're just constantly asking if we need anything. And especially with COVID, I got stuck in quarantine by myself in Thailand. Like whole provinces were shutting down. And, you know, she was there bringing me food every day. So while the interview process was super lax, much like the teaching process is super lax, on the flip side of that, Thailand is definitely just the most laid back place you can go. And I think it's a good intro place for anyone that's looking to teach overseas, just because everyone is so helpful and laid back. Whereas I feel like China and Japan, if I'd gone there, you know, it would have been fine, but they might have been a little bit more, you know, by the book, which kind of, it'd be a different experience, but may not have been more as flexible.
Right.
So what has been your favorite part about moving to Thailand? And, you know, as you said, surviving the pandemic. Yeah. So outside of the teaching experience, there must have been some, I guess, experiences of being that Firang or being seen as that foreigner. You know, it's because...
It's been super interesting because I'm around teacher Jenny. She's my friend that came with me, and she's tall. She's got red hair, you know, pale skin. And everywhere we go, we're in Supanburi, which is a tiny province. They don't see a lot of foreigners here. So they stare at her and they look at me and try to speak to me because I look like them. I look Asian. They think that I'm her translator and they go to me for everything. So it's been really, I kind of had like a miniature identity crisis when I first got here because I was like, I look like these people, but I don't speak like them. Whereas in America, I speak like them, but I don't look like them. So it was just this weird moment of having to like come to terms with my own identity. And I feel like a lot of people do that when they come out of college because, you know, college is like, oh, you get to party, you get to have fun, you get to do whatever, you get to experiment. Then you get out of college and you're in this full-time job and everyone's just kind of like, I don't actually know what to do with my life. And that was me here in Thailand. I wasn't quite sure how to marry my American status with an Asian heritage. So Thailand in general, just kind of developing relationships with the locals, even though we don't speak the same language. There are plenty of them here that have just taken care of me and like they see me around and they give me extra food or they stop me and make sure that I'm aware of the regulations. Because when COVID hit, I was down in the islands and the islands shut down. The airports were shutting down. They weren't letting people in or out. And I got really freaked out because I was like, how am I going to get to my home province? I need to get back to my apartment. And they were just so kind and so helpful. Everything they did, like their businesses were getting shut down. They were losing jobs and they were still like, hey, you can stay in this bungalow for free. So me and some of the travelers that got stranded, we stayed in some of these bungalows that were usually like 100 a night, and they just let us stay for free until we could figure things out. So just the culture, the generosity in Thailand has been really amazing to experience. And combine that with teaching, you know, I get stressed out and I get super anxious, especially after the pandemic, and all the Thai teachers and Filipino teachers they're all there and they're just ready to do anything that they possibly can to make me feel at home, to make me feel at peace, to make sure that, you know, everything's going smoothly and that I'm not completely panicking a little, but not completely. So Thailand's just a nice, chill place. Everything about this culture is like, you know, it'll happen when it happens. It's going to be okay. Whereas America, you know, it's like, do this now or you're going to die.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we discussed this with a couple of people before this, before your episode. You know, we discussed being scared at a small company, you know, of being either let go because of a small mistake that you did or something like that. But I guess in this case, also because, of course, you know, because the pandemic hit and it was, let's say, new for everybody, right? So it was definitely different in that sense. And there was a little bit more relaxation in terms of that, but there were still people getting laid off, at least in the US and all over the world. But again, like you said, you know, of course, they never knew when teachers are going to come back, right? So it was definitely a part of where, okay, yes, we're going to keep them here until we know what's next. That's a great, you know, thing to hear that the people over there were so supportive, and it's amazing to hear, you know, that when you don't have to maybe know the language or know the culture exactly to be able to blend in with nice people, you know. Nice or niceness has no language. It's just about who wants to take care of you, and they'll do that without asking back, you know. And so that's a great thing to hear. Okay, yeah, Chanah. So, like you mentioned, you know, your boss or whoever was kind of the leader of that small company was actually very helpful when the pandemic hit, right? And is that somebody that you go to advice often in Thailand, or do you prefer to call someone back home? You know, we're sure that you get stuck sometimes, especially being in a place that you don't really know everything that you need to do, and sometimes you're not given enough instructions about that. So would you say you've found basically a mentor in him, or have you found mentors in the past? How do you find them? And do you remember something that one of your mentors told you, and how do you apply it to your life?
I will say, as far as like making big decisions right now regarding pandemic, regarding jobs, regarding moving home, one thing that I have learned from my time here, from my time graduating, is just adults know nothing. We're all in the same boat. I can ask my mom all day long what I should do. Should I come home? Should I stay? I can ask my boss here and his wife, who are like, they're like my parents. Like, they're very supportive. And I could ask them all day, like, oh, there's a pandemic. Should I go home? What do you think I should do? And all of them will give me the same answer. They're like, I don't know.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, they're like, they'll tell me what they think is best. So Supamas, she's a Thai mother / my supervisor's wife. She's the one that was like, I have a daughter, you know, in England, and I missed her and I want her safe, but it's safer for her to stay in England. And that's kind of what really got me to be like, okay, it's probably safer if I stay in Thailand. But none of the adults in my life could give me a solid answer. And, you know, when you're growing up as a kid in high school and junior high, elementary school, you know, adults know everything. They know all the answers. You ask them something and their word is the Bible, you know, they know everything.
Right.
And then you grow up and you start living your own life and you start making decisions that are not traditional. Moving to Thailand is not something my mom did. It's not really something a whole lot of people are just going to up and do. And I have questions regarding this situation, and a pandemic's not traditional. And the adults in my life are like, yeah, we can't help you. We can try to help you, but we don't know. And I'm like, that's not what I was expecting to hear. You're supposed to know everything.
Yeah.
So That's probably one of the top things I've learned is like, we really are all in the same boat, you know, I guess to people coming out of college, those of you who are worried, if you're listening to the podcast, if you're worried about making the wrong decision or you're worried about making a risky decision, what other people are going to think of you, just, you know, take that chance, take that risk. This is your life. You're the person you have to live with these decisions for the rest of your life. If I had let my mom control, you know, what I wanted to do. She was always supportive. She was always, you know, I want you to travel before you have to settle down. But it's scary for her to think that her daughter is going to move all the way across the world with no connections and without family. Like, that's a really scary thing for her to think of. But it wasn't her ultimate decision. It was mine. And, you know, a lot of people get out of college and they're like, I don't know, you know, what the next step is, or like, how do I get my dream job, especially in this, you know, atmosphere and this climate. But you know, my advice to them is like, we're all in our 20s. You know, we're all still young. We're going to make mistakes, but you got to take those risks and just be okay when things go wrong. And I think that, you know, you asked something that my mentors have told me just in the past. And Leanne, I used to work for her at the rec when I was at Auburn. She got me into marketing. Her biggest thing was always, it's your life and it's your decisions, and you're going to have to live with those a lot longer than your mom is going to have to live with them. And it was always because I was a little worried about what my mom wanted me to do, what would make her happy and what would make her proud. And that's a lot of kids' struggles. They want to make their parents proud. And, you know, me moving to Thailand, it does make her proud that I'm fulfilling my dream. But at the same time, it was such a difficult time for me to be like, okay, I'm going to do this on my own without my mom, without my sister, without my boyfriend. Like, I'm going to up and do this by myself. And Leanne was always the one that encouraged me, you know, you take those risks, you do what's best for you. Don't think of other people. And that's really hard for us as Americans, as millennials, to not think of other people. We always want to know what other people are thinking of us or what, you know, other people would make of this decision. None of us are capable of making our own decisions anymore. We have to ask each other, hey, what do you think of this? What if I did this? What would you do? None of us we want to be independent thinkers. I think our generation does, but it's very difficult for us to get to that point because we're so worried about, you know, public opinion or making the wrong choice. And when you're afraid of making the wrong choice, you're paralyzed and you're not going to move forward if you do that. So, just
I think
go for it.
I think we talked about this on the podcast before, but the reason why we started this podcast was, you know, to let people know you can, you know, you don't have to be paralyzed. You can make that small step, and, you know, when the things start flowing, you know, they'll keep flowing. So I guess that's always helped me in that direction. Realizing that also that something you mentioned that adults don't know anything. So what I realized was, a lot of people can figure out the problems, but no one knows the solution. That's something, you know, you're going to have to work on. And, you know, you might reach a solution, but again, no one knows if that's the optimal or that's the perfect solution, you know, that you wanted. So,
okay, yeah, and I mean, I was talking to my uncle yesterday too about this, you know, and he, of course, at this point is, of course, they say that they've got a lot more experiences and a lot more, you know, things that they face and stuff like that. But I think everybody's life is so different that you never really like know what to do next, right? So they can't really tell you. Yes, they can advise you. To take that or not, again, is a gamble. You know, life is always going to be a gamble. Like, and it's better if I do it with my own money. You know, it's better if I do it with my own time, with my own decisions, than to take somebody else's decisions or say that, okay, this is a safer route for me to go. You know, people say, okay, in India, it's like, okay, be a doctor, be an engineer, be this, be that, right? People are pushing you into the direction, do co-curriculars, do this, do that, and then you're going to be successful. You know, maybe I don't want to do that, you know? Maybe it's about saying that I want to follow my own path. And if things go wrong, things go wrong. You know, I don't, of course, yes, like you mentioned too, you know, it's about making sure that you're making your parents proud, right? That's something that I'm facing a lot right now, is being able to think about, like, if I need to be able to give back to my parents, how am I going to do that? Right? I know that they've spent a lot, let's say, on my education. They've spent a lot of time. They've spent a lot of dedication to make us something that maybe they couldn't become or to achieve our own dreams or their dreams, whatever it might be, right? How I think do we play with that is still going to be a gamble. And they always say, the bigger you play, the bigger you're going to win. Nobody ever just did not take part in the gamble that was big enough and, became rich or something like that. So that's always going to be there, I think. And it's better that we blame ourselves if something is to go wrong. And hopefully it doesn't, it's, I think, again, like we say, it's about how we react to those decisions or to the situation that comes upon us than being stuck and not make that decision. Because on our deathbeds, we don't want to be sitting there or lying there and say, I could have done that and maybe my life would have been different.
Like how you hit on, adults in our lives, they have all these experiences and they love to say that to us. They're like, I have more experience than you. And on one hand, that's true. You do have more life experience than me. But on the other hand, you don't have this experience because this experience is not your life. It's my life. And like you said, they can advise us all they want. And, it's up to us to take that advice and understand how we're going to use that advice moving forward. But they can't necessarily fix our problems or pave the way. Like, that's up to us to do. And it's always been interesting because all the adults in my life, they've always hit me with, I have more experience than you. And it's like, all right, I respect that. And I'm glad you do. But,
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, like I was talking to him yesterday and I said, he's like, okay, what do you want to do? How are you going to settle in life? Like, what's your plan and stuff? And I was like, I'm whatever age I am, up until I feel like, okay, I'm stuck and I really don't know what to do, or I'm stuck and I'm like, okay, I really don't want to gamble anymore. That's when I'm going to think about settling. For all I know, like, I could be getting an opportunity to work in the remotest part of the world and I would like to go. That's just the kind of person I am. And that's something that I think pushes me to be better, to be able to make sure that I'm going to be getting those experiences that they maybe did not even get. Right. So it's not always, it's about, okay, I'm 32 and I still don't know what I'm doing. Okay, maybe it's time to rethink and make those safer choices. But until then, I think personally, we should be free.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is that, for Arjit and I, at least on this podcast, and a lot of listeners listening, at this age, we don't have that responsibility of anyone else. We are only responsible for ourselves, right? We don't have any employees working under us, or we don't have, no one's like, we don't have a family, like we don't have our own kids, that are dependent upon us. So it's like we are responsible for ourselves and we can gamble, like, Ajit mentioned here. So it's always better to do that. But on the other side, you're at a different end of that spectrum because you do have, your own students that I guess look out to you. So what kind of advice do you even give them any advice, or are you just stuck at that, oh, please just understand English and that I'm fine with that?
I wish I could give them advice. I really do. But like I said, they're 4 and 5, and even American 4 and 5-year-olds that speak English, usually they come up to you, show you their latest booger, and then run away. And you're like, that's gross. Okay, bye. About the same in Thailand. They come up to me, they yell, teacher Chanah, and then they start speaking Thai. And I'm like, yeah, Put Thai my dad, I can't speak Thai, don't know what you're saying. And it doesn't faze them, at the least. All they want is attention. So while I can't give them advice, I do work very hard to make sure I'm still giving them as much of myself as I can. So I can't communicate, do this for life, or, maybe don't jump off the table with your shirt on your head. But because that's how you get hurt. But I can every day just show them, how much I love them and how much I appreciate them, that they do matter. Because there are a few of them that don't necessarily get a whole lot of love at home. Or, students are the same no matter where you are in the world. It's not like Thai students are different than American students. The only difference is that we learn differently and that they speak a different language. But everyone has a life, everyone has a home life. And part of being a teacher, no matter where you are, is investing in your students and just trying to make some kind of impact on their life that, improves their lives, even if it's just smiling at them or giving them a hug. I've got so many kids that just need hugs every day. They just run up to me and they just need to be held for a little while. And that makes me realize like maybe they're not getting a whole lot of love at home, or, maybe their house is too overcrowded. A lot of these students, live with their mom, their dad, their sister, their brother, and then their grandparents, and then their aunts and uncles. And like, while that's a lot of family, Americans, we think of big family as reunions. In other places, sometimes that means the children are getting overlooked. So, it's not always that case. But when a kid wants your attention, wants your love, you need to make sure that you're providing it for them, because you just never know what's going on at home. And I think that encompasses just all of humanity. That's not just student-teacher relationship. You always need to try to be better and giving and understanding and empathetic to other human beings, because you will never know what their walk of life has held.
Yeah, it seems like even if you weren't able to give them life advice, they were at least able to teach you something, or at least spark that thought about humanity. So, I mean, it's, I guess, good, like on that level. But
I think that's something that we were thinking about too. Asking about what is something that the students have taught you. And you touched up a little bit about that. It's interesting how without those experiences that the elder people tell us that they have, somebody so young can teach us so much sometimes, or just give us thought. So that's incredible. What would you say is one thing, actually, now that we've brought that up, is one thing that they've taught you in one word?
To relax, to calm down, to chill. The whole culture here is sabai, chill. It'll happen when it happens. I'm not used to that. Americans don't chill. We don't relax. We thrive off of stress and anxiety. The children are the ones that have taught me, because I walk into class and it's chaotic. Kids are jumping off the walls, but amidst that chaos, there's so many kids that are just sitting there happy as can be, and they just want to come hold my hand. And that's the moment that I have to realize life is always going to be chaotic. I'm going to have children taking their shirts off, taking their pants off. I've got one kid crying in the corner, another one losing their teeth. And then amidst all of that chaos, I still have this just sense of peace and sense of being calm and being there with the kids, because there's always just a few kids that's like, yeah, it's chaotic, but I'm happy. And it's weird, but it's true. Life can give you a storm, but it's up to you how you're going to deal with it, how you're going to react to it and feel about it. So weirdly enough, the children are the ones that have taught me, like, life's unpredictable and crazy, but it'll be okay.
A chaotic millennial life, as we said. Okay, so now that about being able to relax, being chill, I guess. In hindsight, do you think you should have been able to relax like when you were 14? Because you've been working since 14, and at one point in college, you even had 4 part-time jobs. Like,
Yeah, that was fun.
what kind of what kind of pressure, if any, obviously some was on there for you to get that 4th job? Like, what was the best way you overcame it then? Because again, you learned, I guess, now you can relax, but how did you go through that? Like,
I don't think I knew that this version of life existed. Like I said, Americans are running themselves dead. We live to work as Americans. We work 9 to 5, and 9 to 5 isn't even, real anymore. We get there at 7:30, 7 o'clock, then we don't leave till 7 or 8 at night. And I didn't realize that other countries, that it was even possible to be done working at 4:30 and to just chill with your life and be okay when things go wrong. Because in America, we thrive off of stress, and I thrived off of, multitasking. Ever since I was in high school, I had a job and I was a part of like 4 different extracurricular activities, and that leaked into college, where I had 4 jobs just to pay for college, because graphic design was not cheap. So, at the end of the day, my whole thought process was like, I have to work. I have to make money to afford this. I have to make sure that I'm contributing as much of myself as I can so that I can achieve, this degree. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with, hard work, diligence, and contributing as much as you can. But at the same time, I grew up in the American culture. I didn't know anything different. I thought that, success was feeling like I'd done 8,000 things that day. Whereas now I look at success, and success to me is just being happy with how I handled my day, how I impacted others, and just being at peace at the end of the day. Whereas, you know, in college, I was like, I was successful today. I got done with 8 projects. 6 of them are going to fail, and I didn't eat today. Woohoo!
Pulling another all-nighter, right?
Yep. Wally World.
Definitely. That was a crazy time, and I think it was different for me just because, you know, for me, going from India to going to a culture that where you have to work, you know, as a kid in India, as somebody who even graduated high school without having technically a job, you know, nobody really pushed you into that. Nobody really told you to go work a part-time job. And then I moved to the US and I was like, I love this. I love having 3 jobs and being able to do all these projects in a day. And this gives me happiness, you know, now that I've come back here and I really have, you know, let some of those things be handled by other people, you know, like the tasks are divided all of the time. It's like, okay, I need to do my things, but I still can't. I don't know why, you know, because, and then I'm like, okay, this is not success for me. I want to be working all day. So I think that's very different than in my case, just because, you know, you've grown up in the US and now you've moved to a much more chill place. Whereas for me, it's like, okay, I grew up here, I've come back here, but when I was in the US, I think I was the happiest because I had so much to do. You know, I was always on my toes. I was always like, okay, I love the 9 to 5, even if I have to show up and work at 8, am I happy doing what I'm doing? You know, do I find success in being at a job that gives me pleasure? You know, even if I have to leave at 6, am I happy at the end of the day? And I mean, of course, you know, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's another difference is that I didn't necessarily, like I had part-time jobs that I enjoyed, but I didn't really necessarily find fulfillment. And then I'll leave the companies unnamed, but there was a few full-time jobs where I just didn't do a lot. And at the end of the day, I was like, I just sat for 8 hours. Whereas there's other full-time jobs that I've taken where I've had to get 5 projects done in a day. And again, I did thrive and enjoyed that level of productivity. So, I mean, like you said, it just depends on each other's experiences. But it has been very different to experience another culture and how they live here. But I think, you know, I agree. Some people can find success in finishing 8 projects a day, and then some people can find success in just being like, I survived.
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, it's about finding happiness and those little chunks of happiness that you can pull from either doing those projects or having the 10 minutes of relaxation between, you know, 2 kids jumping on walls. So either way, I think it's about the happiness we find in the little things. So we'll go from there.
Grass is always greener on the other side, I guess. But
right. Yeah, sometimes. So what does a normal day look like for you right now that, you know, you're of course doing your teacher job, but also you're trying to do a little bit of the freelancing? How much of the freelancing are you able to do outside of teaching?
So teaching is actually, like I said, very different in Thailand. It's also in the sense that I get to school at 7:45, and then I have maybe 2 or 3 classes in the morning for an hour, and then I have like sometimes 2 or 3 hours of not doing anything, and I'm just in the teacher room until my next class. So sometimes I do have a lot of free time in my day, and those are the hours that I dedicate towards freelance work. So it just kind of depends on my schedule for the week if I'll accept freelance, because you know, I understand that design has deadlines, and I'm determined to meet those deadlines in a professional timeline, even if it's just freelance, even if it's just working for, you know, smaller companies. I usually discuss with them, be like, hey, also I'm in Thailand, so got to make sure that the timeline lines up with me being 12 hours ahead and my day being their night and their night being my day. So it's a very delicate balance. It's definitely doable, but it's up to me to set those priorities. So right now I don't actually have a whole lot of freelance going on, but 2 weeks ago I had like an entire branding project that I was working on, and that was my whole weekend and every free and waking moment. But it's definitely interesting to swap gears between teaching kindergarten and then coming back and being like, okay, which type is going to work best with this brochure? And like going through sans serif and serif and making my way back through color studies, and then running to my kids and being like, this is the color orange. Which Pantone swatch is this? And they're like, what is Pantone? I'm like, don't worry about it. So it's just, it's definitely different, but it's manageable for someone that has previously done multitasking and enjoyed it.
So, you know, we've talked on this podcast before of how cross-pollination of not just ideas, but culture as well is so important, helping you not be stagnant and so much more. How do you think this teaching experience would help you in your career when you do get back to your design setting in US?
I personally think that traveling anywhere at any point in time is an experience that cannot be replicated. And I will speak this until the day I die. You have to experience other cultures to develop as a person. You could be fine living in the States for the rest of your life, but you will not, I personally think you will not reach the fullest potential. You won't necessarily, you could, but there's something that travel and experiencing other people and other cultures adds to your life that staying in one place wouldn't. So I think me coming back to the States as a designer, traveling has really added to that. Not necessarily in a design point of view. I can't come to a job interview and be like, I went to Thailand and saw this kind of design and we should incorporate it. Or like, I learned all these Thai words that we can put in our design and make it, diverse. I can't necessarily bring physical evidence of my time here and lend that to design, but I can bring the mentalities that I've learned here and just how they work and their love and generosity. And the culture has just kind of developed my sense of self. And I think that's important. And especially in the design world, everyone is so, and Arjit, I guess you'd be able to chime in on this too. Everyone's so particular and everyone has a niche. Designers wear monocolors and have monochrome parties where we only wear all black, or someone only wears all red. And those are fun. And we have type parties where we dress up as a font face and I am Bedoni or someone is Comic Sans. And those are fun. But in college, I didn't feel like I was part of that group. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not a designer because I don't get this. Everyone has this aesthetic where they have to be all white or all beige. And I never really fit into that. I felt like I was like, oh, I'm not a good designer because I don't have an aesthetic. I don't even know what that is. And coming to Thailand has just kind of helped me be like, I have my own unique story and Thailand is going to now become part of that. Everyone has their own unique experience. And for me, coming back to the States, I'm not there yet, so it's not like I'm currently coming back, but preparing to come back. I'm already job searching because I know job searching is hard right now. And there's been already employers that are like, what's your deal? And I'm like, I'm interviewing in the parking lot of 7-Eleven at 9:00 at night because I need the Wi-Fi from the coffee shop. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, by the way, I'm not in the States yet. And it's a very unique position because they're like, you're a designer. Why did you go? So being able to marry my experience just culturally and the experiences that I've had here with design has been just very interesting to try to explain to employers why I had to come over here, why I felt the need to spend a year away and do something that not many people would necessarily choose. But yeah, trust me, professional world doesn't really understand why the 24 chaotic millennial would just up and move to Thailand and then try to come back to a design job.
No, I think you're definitely right. And, it's something about the imposter syndrome as well. It's something that I faced myself, being in, and I think industrial design or the parties that I saw did not necessarily sometimes have those themes that you mentioned, right? Sometimes we were just
still love to go to one just
Okay. Well, I think it wasn't just like that for us. Sometimes I think it was just like, okay, we're going to do this today. And yeah, sometimes it was like, I've myself held a tiki theme party, and I had those little umbrellas and everybody's drinks and they didn't really work because we were trying to put them in solo cups and that doesn't always go right, but of course we've all had that. I think it's about saying how and what makes you different, and that's something that sometimes you cannot really necessarily tell anybody without showing them. So it's very important to put that in your portfolio. And I think that's something that I've personally struggled with a little bit. And, now that I think about it even more, that you mentioned it, that's what the journey is all about, right? How do you display that in your portfolio? How do you say, this is who I am, and this is why you should give me back my design job, right? Yeah. So that's something, of course, that we're always going to struggle with telling people who haven't, of course, traveled, because those who have know that it's very different. And it teaches you so much more than just being at your desk, either sketching or playing with fonts and whatever that might be.
It's also just incredibly refreshing.
No, definitely. I think, and that's, I think, like they say, you can't really design in a closed room with just white walls. You have to go out there and get those experiences, right? That's something that everybody says, and we've heard that so much. So going out and exploring the world as a canvas, I think that's really, really what's important, because we gain those experiences that we can, again, push back into our designs, show that we've had those experiences, we've seen those different things, and then we can apply those. And, we were on the study abroad trip together to Ireland, and that's something that we both experienced and learned a lot from as well. So that was really something that we can touch up upon during an interview. And so definitely something that helps. But how is it, being seen as a little different in the US? You mentioned that, you'd like to hit on just cultural differences and or just being seen as an Asian American, or just the fact that, you don't look like everybody else, let's say. What would you want to say about that?
I say embrace it. It took me a long time to come to terms with that, because I grew up in a white household. My mom's a tall ginger, and I went to a white high school in Birmingham, Alabama. And then I went to, Auburn University, where we wear flannel and wear cowboy boots and wave our shakers on Saturdays. And I loved it. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, it was kind of interesting because I had Asian friends with Asian households, and I'd go to their house and they would have, their culture just all over their house. And that was the first time I was like, oh, I don't have that, but I'm supposed to be one of you. But at the same time, I'm not one of you. And so it was a very weird middle ground of me learning that I am too Asian to be fully American by my looks, and I'm too American to be Asian by my, growing up status and ability to speak an Asian language. But it was also just, I think 2020 has really helped me develop it. So partially coming from Thailand and realizing that it's okay to be different, but also from 2020 I know we've had trouble with minorities, and, America's fighting for those rights and protesting, and, minorities are really standing together. And this is honestly the first year that I have felt in myself an identity. So I'm not American by my looks. I'm not Asian by anything else. But when I put it together, I'm Chanah, and I am okay with it. I love who I am now. And I think that's one of the hardest things for our generation to grasp is loving yourself. We talk about it. We talk about mental health, and we're like, you've got to love yourself before you can love other people. But it's so hard to accept the flaws that you see in yourself that other people may not see, but that you live with. And it's taken me until now to kind of be like, I like that I'm Asian American. I didn't really necessarily hate it growing up, but I didn't know any different. And then I came to Asia, and there's this little Filipina family, and she's got her mom's here, and they have adopted me as their grandchild. I met her, and she was like, hello, you are my Asian grandchild. And she, every time I see her, she's like, hello, baby. And I'm like, yes, hello. I love you so much. And it's very different because I see these family units in Asia, and I'm like, I didn't have that. I don't regret anything. I love my family. But there's something about old Asian grandmas are the cutest thing on this planet. Fight me. They are so cute. And I'm kind of sad that I don't have one, but now I have an adopted one. And that's another funny thing I didn't struggle with. I always knew I was adopted, but now it's kind of this running joke where and it's definitely part of my identity. I wasn't necessarily just adopted at 6 months old. I've been adopted by so many families since I've grown up. I've been adopted because I've also learned adoption is, taking in a child from another country or that doesn't have a family. But I've also realized adoption can be so much more than that. I've been adopted by so many families over the years and just become one of them, and they care for me, and they mentor me, and they help me. When they say it takes a village to raise a child, it's very true. And that village doesn't necessarily have to be central to where you grew up. So I like to say I've been adopted by Asian grandma here, and that's now become part of my identity. And everyone has a different story. And it's really hard to sometimes be like, this is my story. It's very different. I may not fit the cookie cutter designer that you want, but I can offer you different experiences, different views. And that's one of my biggest takeaways, is just kind of settling down and being like, yeah, I'm a weird, chaotic human being, and I don't know what I'm doing with my life sometimes. And I compare myself. Everyone compares themselves. I've got my blog and my portfolio stuck together, and my blog is chaotic. There's, I think, an article about monkeys on there coming out today. And I'm posting.
And what
that
is that name? Just so we say, just so people can find that. Do you mind mentioning that?
Yeah. If you're interested in my blog, it's called ChineseHannah.com, because I am Chanah. And to pronounce Chanah, I have to introduce myself and say it's like Chinese Hannah. And that has become my whole brand. But, a lot of people post their portfolios of professional work. And here I am in Asia. And it's not only I'm different, my work is different. So it's like, here's my professional work. Also, here's a story about monkeys and that time I got attacked. So it's just, it's a lot of different opportunities, different experiences, but just kind of accepting it and embracing it,
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you mentioned, about grandmas, we here in India say, when you go to your grandma's house, you come back fat, and so that's, I think they say that everywhere. I think they might say that everywhere, actually. Yeah. I mean, definitely in the South too, you go there and all you're going to get is, fried food and just the best things ever. So that's always going to be the best thing ever, is to be able to go make those connections and learn from their experiences, like we say, right? So we'll keep that going. We'll keep, learning from other people. And we definitely, I think that this is a great note to end. And thank you. We want to thank you before we do that, Chanah, because this has been great. I think people are going to be able to gain a lot from this episode, just because of all the experiences that you've shared and everything that you said. And we can't wait for people to go to your blog, check for themselves what all you've done and how you've been attacked by a monkey and how you've fallen onto a car from a scooter and all kinds of stuff. So I personally love reading those stories, and I think other people will do that as well. So thank you so much. We'll put those links in the description. And yeah, thank you so much again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I've really been looking forward to hopping on this podcast. I really enjoy listening to y'all's podcast. It helps me remember that I'm not the only young professional out there without, a chaotic life.
Solid plan.
Yeah. It's very refreshing to talk and listen to other people talk about. So keep up the work.
Right. Yeah, we don't know the solution, but we just want to say, we're all in this problem together. So whatever helps.
We're all going to have to work towards a common goal. We're all going to have to make sure that we're going towards something that's nirvana, that's happiness. So we'll keep doing that while everybody else that's older to us keeps telling us that we need to learn from their experiences. So
yeah.
Until then.
So this is your host Hemant Bhatia.
And I'm Arjit Singh.
And you've been listening to Kadam, the Small Steps podcast. If you found value in this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, let us know how we can make this better.
A traditional career is always untraditional. Thanks for listening.